So Carson Beck just announced that he will not be a Bulldog next year, and instead he will be going over to Miami to be a Hurricane. I honestly did not think this was coming. I thought the reason he would leave Georgia was for the NFL draft. Well, that is just the day we live in now, where guys like him can actually make more NIL money from another team than being a late round pick. In this video, I want to talk all about this Carson Beck situation and what the implications for Georgia may be, and with the season being over and the offseason beginning, there is just so much to get to in general. But before I begin, I would really appreciate it if you would drop a like and subscribe. It only takes 5 seconds, plus you can always change your mind, and your support truly does mean the world. Alright, so as soon as the season ended, Carson Beck had a big business decision to make. Anytime a player goes on and is going to declare for the NFL, they're going to put their name in and get a lot of feedback from NFL GMs. Those draft grades are going to come back, and these are real. It's not what somebody on Twitter says. This is real feedback from NFL GMs that basically say what you are viewed as and where you most likely will get drafted in terms of rounds. And it turns out that his draft grade most likely was not all that great to look at if you are Beck. So that left him in a situation. Well, not really, because NIL now makes the decision obvious, but either he was going to have to face the fact that he was a day 2 draft pick, or he had the option to come back to college to develop for another year and still get paid to then hopefully become a first rounder. And as a Georgia fan, you could get pissed at him for going over to Miami, but I really can't blame him. With the way college football is structured now, it's a business and guys are going to put themselves in the best situation to succeed. There is almost no loyalty anymore. It is a completely transactional league. I'm not saying that loyal players don't exist anymore, but if you're looking for them, they are very few and far between. So I really don't think you can be mad at Beck. He made a very smart, well-informed, and correct decision to come back to school to develop more. So at the end of the day, Carson Beck made a decision that was in his best interest. We will never know what those conversations were like behind closed doors, but for years in the past, we know that Beck was told he would be a first round pick. But let's just be blunt and say it how it was. Beck did not play at the standard that NFL scouts wanted to see him play at this past season. His decision making was not at an NFL level, and he just doesn't seem to be ready. But I do think he is a good enough quarterback to keep a team at a playoff level right now. And I think a lot of teams saw that. And that is why he is going to be potentially making $4 million at Miami. I mean, that is just significant money. That's probably on par with what he would have made in the pros anyways. And now over at Miami, he gets to hang out with his girlfriend. I kind of saw this coming. But getting back to Georgia, Gunnar Stockton as of right now is set to be the guy under center in 25. Stockton was the hero Smart and the Dogs relied upon after Beck's injury during the SEC championship game. The redshirt sophomore quarterback led Georgia to an overtime victory over the Texas Longhorns. And upon learning of the severity of Beck's absence, Stockton was given the nod to make his first career start during the college football playoff quarterfinal matchup against Notre Dame. Ultimately, as we know, the Bulldogs lost to the Fighting Irish and were knocked out of contention for the national championship. However, Stockton showcased his worth with little time of preparation and a very limited amount of snaps. Heading into the 2025 season, I think he could be the guy to keep this program at the top of the college football world. Anyways, moving on, now let's talk about the transfer portal, because all of a sudden it is that time of year now. And with the draft and people who have transferred out, there actually are some holes to fill. If I were to sort of make a Christmas shopping list, I think there are 2 position groups that are obvious to me. The first is defensive line. They need some guys for the trenches. You look at guys like Stackhouse going out of the program, obviously a significant loss. You look at Williams, who's going to get drafted, that's a big loss. You got Xavier McLeod coming back. You got guys like Jordan Hall, who was injured, coming back. And Georgia has a lot of young talent coming up, but I would love it if the Dogs could get a big impact interior defensive tackle. Georgia has not had impact players at that position in a few years, and it really has shown, as much as Georgia fans would hate to admit it. I really don't like where Georgia is at with that D-line right now, but I'm definitely not saying it's time to panic. I mean, this is the Georgia Bulldogs we are talking about with Kirby Smart at head coach. By the time the season rolls around, they are going to be set, but at the moment, it is definitely a talking point. Other than that, they have got some defensive backs coming in, they kept some corners, they got some safeties, the linebackers have been just fine. On offense, there is a lot of talent in terms of receivers. Running back, they got a guy who apparently is super shifty coming from Notre Dame. Kirby Smart definitely is going to add another quarterback in the portal. I'm not saying it's going to be a huge splash, it could just be a 3rd or 4th string guy, but there is no way the way the QB depth chart looks right now is going to be what it looks like by the time week 1 kicks off next year. And kind of piggybacking off the defensive line, but on the other side of the ball that I think the Bulldogs need to address is the offensive line, because they have a few guys that nobody knows anything about outside of the organization because they were way down 3rd or 4th on the depth chart. To me, the Bulldogs need depth. They need experience. They need juniors and seniors leading the way, not some inexperienced sophomores, freshmen, redshirt freshmen. They need some beef up front, because Georgia has to bounce back in order to stay at an elite level as a program. Again, I know they have won all these championships. I know they were in the playoff, so they did not drop off by any means, and they dealt with so many weird things and injuries throughout the season, but they did not get to the Final Four this year. So next year, that is the goal, because if it does not happen, a team that falls short of their goals, they lose a few guys to the draft and in the transfer portal, then the next season they don't make the Final 8, and then the program sort of starts to fall off. We saw what happened with Florida State. Now, I know this is an entirely different thing. They have Kirby Smart. Players are going to want to play for Georgia. This program is not actually ever going to fall off in the near future, but you get what I'm saying. They need to beef up the lines on both sides of the ball. They need to be sure that Stockton is the guy, and I would not mind seeing an offensive line coaching change either. I know Georgia has a lot of haters, and people all offseason long are going to make up narratives about what this team can't do. I know the latest one has been that Georgia can't produce good skill position players to the NFL, but this past year crushed those narratives because of what Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers have done. The Bulldogs are in a good spot. The whole Carson Beck situation is definitely interesting, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. Here's what some other guys have had to say about all of this.
We had you on the show last Sunday, and since your appearance on the show, the Branch brothers committed. Safety Adrian Maddox flipped that commitment from UF to Georgia. Wide receiver Noah Thomas, big-time wide receiver in the portal, is now a Dog. And quarterback Carson Beck is now a Miami Hurricane. So let's talk about that UGA QB room. What's your thoughts right now on the room? Just general thoughts on what still remains.
I mean, it's unproven, but these are these guys were highly recruited for a reason. I mean, Gunnar Stockton, you get to see a small sample size, and first ever game you ever play, you play against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, really. And it's crazy. Gunnar Stockton's first 6 quarters of playing major college Division I quarterback, he went two quarters against Texas, and he went 4 quarters against Notre Dame. And that's not, that's a tough task for anybody. But I think right now, I do think Gunnar Stockton kind of has a leg up on this job. I don't think it's you just hand him the keys. Ryan Puglisi is a young man that very highly recruited, really got down to Georgia and Ohio State for him. And I remember talking to him at the Nashville On-3 Elite Series, the first year we had it. Go back and look at that roster, who we had in Nashville, oh, by the way. But talking to Ryan Puglisi, in that kind of setting, he said, look, man, I had to basically tell Ohio State not to call anymore. I was done. I was going to Georgia. So it kind of tells you, how vested he is in trying to win this job. So
that's really all I got for this video. Thank you all so much if you made it to this point. And if you enjoyed and haven't yet, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, because your support truly does mean the world. And also, let me know what you would like to see next. And until then, I will see you all later.